Hey everyone, it's Victoria. I'm so glad you could join me. I am an American who is currently living in Bilbao, Spain, and I'm a graduate student working on my Master's in International Humanitarian Action, both from the University of Deusto here in Bilbao and at the University of Malta. Today is day 11. Wow, it's day 11 of quarantine here in Spain, and it is March 25th, 2020. So today was a day that it should be my normal routine. I woke up a bit before my class, ate some breakfast, had class. It was talking about, basically the guy for the first hour was talking about the scientific method, and I got kind of bored by that, so I kind of zoned out a little bit because I've covered that fairly extensively in my educational past. So with that, I decided I took my laptop with me and I made a pot of coffee, which was fantastic. And then group project meeting in the middle of class because we were talking about a group project for class. And then we had the second half of class, which was pretty basic. And then after that we had, what did I do after that? After that we got done. I had lunch. After lunch I was planning on working and getting things accomplished, and then it didn't happen very well. I mean, I did get a few things done, but not very much. Then we had a meeting with the program, and then where basically we found out that nobody knows what's going to happen, and hopefully we will be restarting classes here in person, but nobody knows, and it looks like they're going to be extending the quarantine measure until the 11th of April, which makes sense. Spain is dangerous right now. The death rate, I looked up, it apparently just passed China's death rate, like the number of deaths that happened in China. So it's getting crazy, but I'm staying inside and I'm being a good person in quarantine and following all of the rules because I don't want to be a hypocrite if I in the future am in charge of a thing, and I have to be, if I'm in charge of people and they ask what did you do back in 2020 when the COVID-19 crisis happened? So I'll tell them I was in my master's program, and when I was in my master's program I was a good person and I stayed home and I did my schoolwork from home, and the only time I left was to go to the store and get groceries. Even though I wanted to go home somewhat, I didn't go home because that would be spreading the risk of the virus to my community, and basically I'm doing what I need to be doing. I don't want to be throwing shade on people who left, like for my friends in the program who decided they needed to go back home. That makes sense in some instances, but for me it made the most sense to stay. With this, I have a bone to pick because it's making me upset every time I think about it. So, it's time to check your privilege. What is privilege? Basically, what is it that gives you your advantage? I don't know what, I'm going to look it up. 1 second. Privilege. It is a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or group. So, privilege. This is a very important word right now in the world. People are suffering, and that's terrible. But perspective comes from understanding where your perspective is and what viewpoints you have. So, I'm not wanting to minimize anybody's struggles or anything because your struggles are real and they do exist, but perspective is only gained once you understand where you're coming from. So, recognize what your privilege is. I'll list some of the things I'm privileged about. I'm privileged that where I live right now, because of my race, I am not a minority. I have been a minority in the past in China, and it was a very strange experience for me. And that is a thing that is a whole nother topic that I don't think I want to talk about on the internet. So, I have that. I have a passport. It's right here. And it's an American passport because I'm an American citizen and I can access a lot of countries visa free, and it's easy for me to travel. The only places I can't travel to make sense, like I can't go to North Korea. I can't go to like Iran. I kind of can go to Cuba, but besides that, basically I can go wherever I want, and a lot of countries I can go to visa-free. I am educated. I'm working on a master's degree right now. I have my undergraduate degree from a private 4-year university in the States. My family owns land because they're farmers. My parents both own their houses. I recognize that I come from a more privileged background than some, and a less privileged background than others. Because of this, once you know where your privileges are, you can better put things into perspective. I think this is a time for the global West. I'm talking about things generally, not specifically. Things can be applied case by case, but using a wide paintbrush to paint the situation. I'm not wanting to go into the details on specific cases, because there is always exceptions to every rule. And I want to go off of the rule, not the exceptions, because I don't want to go too fine in depth. As the majority, the stereotypical West is wealthier than the East. There's better quality things. There's this Eurocentrism. There's this American mindset. There's this idea that whenever I'm reading a textbook, whenever I'm doing anything in my studies for my master, there is a lack of perspective from people who are not educated white people who come from a privileged background. Yeah, I'm going there. And because of that, we haven't learned specific lessons. I see posters and I read articles by organizations I respect that basically say that when we're dealing with crises like this, we need to get advice from people who've dealt with it before. I know that's really shocking. We need to be gathering information from people who have had their communities ripped apart previously by disease. As a whole, Western countries, the ones who are seemingly most affected by COVID-19 at this moment on March 25th, which is the epicenter of the outbreak right now, is in Europe, and it's about to grow exponentially in the States unless quarantine measures are taken and respected, which they currently are somewhat. To my knowledge, I'm also living in Spain right now, so I don't want to cast stones at glass houses and all that drama. But we need to be learning from people who do not look like us and who do not have the same cultural background. This means if we're dealing with things like changing our culture because of quarantine, maybe we need to talk to people who have gone through the Ebola crisis and they had to basically quarantine parts of countries. It's a different context, but maybe we can learn from them. Maybe we can learn from people who've had their lives ripped apart by war and are forced to flee. Maybe we can ask people who've experienced things like this before for their advice and their expertise. Maybe we can take the advice that China gives on their dealings with the COVID-19, even if there's a lot of iffiness on trusting the information China gives. Understandably, I lived there for a year. Understandably, we need to make sure that when we are complaining about things, that we keep it in perspective. I'm not going to say that being stuck at home where you can't do the things you normally do, your activities are limited, you can't go and work out, you can't buy the groceries you're used to doing, you can't do a lot of things. And this is the worst part of this, is dealing with an outbreak like this. Even though it affects everyone, it affects minority groups worse. People who are from impoverished backgrounds, maybe they just got a job and they were pulling themselves out of poverty. And now they can't go to that job because everything's shut down. And if you just started a job, most likely you're at the bottom of the totem pole and they're going to cut your job right now because the economy is crashing. And now people are relying on food banks. Now things are getting real and things are changing in the world today. So we need to be thinking about the whole of the community and the whole of humanity. We are not there is no I in team. There may be a me, but there is a team. We are all together. We are a community right now. We are dealing with a public health crisis. And you know what that means? We're dealing with the public, which means basically everyone. Viruses don't have brains. They can't think. They aren't technically alive. They spread. So when we're dealing with things, we need to take lessons. If it's terrible for you to be staying in your apartment or your house, maybe you're by yourself, maybe you're with roommates like I am, maybe you have a family and you're trying to quarantine your children inside and it's not going so well, and you had about enough of your quality time with them, togetherness for longer than you wish about 3 days ago, and the quarantine started maybe last week. Just remember your blessings. There's a song, an old hymn that goes, count your blessings, name them one by one, count your many blessings. So, figure out what you have been blessed with. Figure out what you are thankful for. Make sure you keep into perspective. So there are currently refugees and people fleeing conflicts. Just because there's public health crisis happening all over the world, it doesn't mean other problems just magically stop. What about the people who are currently trapped between Turkey and Greece and being not in refugee camps not up to the minimum standard, where they don't have access to running water, where they don't have access to things they need to keep themselves sanitary, where they're all crammed in together, where they have no chance of preventing this disease due to public health crisis? What about people who have been fleeing a war and they maybe just started settling down and now they have another thing to do? Maybe they just, think about your worst case scenario and think about another person whose struggle is also terrible. Minorities are still being affected. People are still hurting. Just because a crisis is happening actually it's the majority of the world, it's a pandemic, let's be real. It doesn't mean that all of the other problems just disappear. People are going to starve because of this. With lockdowns happening, like India's entire population is going on lockdown, and there's a lot of people who live day to day. We're taking this day by day because that's the best that we can do. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be catastrophic losses that are ridiculously sad. This is a time where we need to be doing the most proactive thing for us, as I'm speaking to the more privileged and people who are able, the people who can stay home and away from public. The only people who should be going outside are people who are essential workers or people who need to go get food or go to the doctor or go to the pharmacy, or if you have to take your dog out so he doesn't pee on your floor. This is a time to be extremely conservative in our measures of protection for humanity, be that what it may. So, you can't replace a life. You can replace a lot of things, but you cannot replace a person with somebody who's exactly the same. People are irreplaceable. Other things are replaceable. So, keep that in mind. Okay, I'm gonna get off my soapbox a little bit, calm down. But I wrote another song tonight, and hopefully it's good. Hopefully you like it. Let me know if you like it. But it's not really my perspective per se, but more the perspective I hear from my friends on Facebook who have families. So, let's see how this goes. Give me a second, I need to go back to the store. Even though I went there just maybe an hour before, my family is waiting for me just outside the door. And then the only way that I can leave them is to buy groceries. And when we've been quarantined for days now, if only there could be silence. But between the screams and other things, the news that plays on every screen, I'm trying hard just not to crack. So if by the time the store closes and I finally calm down, I'll drive back home tonight. We are home, So let's set the couch on fire. We can burn brighter than the screen. Tonight we are home. So let's set the couch on fire. We can burn brighter than the screen. Tonight. Yay. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think on this video. As always, at the end of my video, there's going to be some applause going. That is for all of the essential workers who are working right now. People fighting COVID-19. People searching for a cure. People searching for a vaccine. Something that will give us a fighting chance with this. Thank you to the nurses and doctors and all of the people who are putting themselves on the front line of this every single day. You are beyond appreciated, and we thank you for that. So, everyone, make sure you check your privilege at the door when you're thinking about these things. Put things into perspective. And I want you to make sure that you stay safe, act smart, stay healthy. And thank you for joining me. And I will see you tomorrow. Good night.
Now we say that. Entendió en tanga. En serio,